In a sudden twist on Monday night, the government of the Republic of Benin said it would file charges against the detained Yoruba Nation agitator, Sunday Adeyemo, otherwise known as Sunday Igboho. Mr. Igboho was on 2 occasions brought before the Court of Appeal in Cotonou, where issues believed to border around his extradition to Nigeria to answer to allegations of stockpiling arms, instigating violence, and promoting disunity in Nigeria, amongst others, were being heard. However, after Monday's proceedings, which started late in the evening and held behind closed doors, the judges ordered his remand in prison custody, pending the conclusion of investigations on how he got into Benin Republic. According to Ibrahim Salami, one of the Cotonou, Benin Republic-based lawyers of Sunday Igboho, the authorities there were concerned with how Igboho got into their country, as well as those who assisted him. Now, the lawyer also explained that the government of Benin Republic claimed Igboho entered their country improperly with the aim of committing heinous crime against the country. This is a developing situation, and I recall Dr. Bati saying, let no one jump to conclusion, immediate trial, because it is developing.
Yes, it is developing, but it is also very confusing what is happening out of Benin. At first, his lawyer was talking about the fact that they said he had a Beninois passport. That was the reason that was first bandied around. But now he's been able to confirm that he had a Nigerian passport and he had a German residency permit to be able to get on board a plane. So the question now is, if he had a Nigerian passport, can't you enter Benin Republic with a Nigerian passport? That's a question I'd like to ask. Maybe that area is quite nebulous. Secondly, with attempt of committing an heinous crime, you ask, but this was somebody that was said to travel out of the country when he was being arrested. So where was the attempt of committing an heinous crime? This is beginning to get confusing to me. And even the fact that all of this, we first thought that it was based on the extradition challenge and the notice and all of that, and the lawyer comes out to say that, oh, there's been no official extradition notice by the government of Nigeria served on the court, then the secret trial, then the fact is still kept in hand chains. I mean, this is all just very nebulous to me. I don't get to the end of this. And I thought the trial had started. We hear new charges. All of a sudden, then the court says, we'll keep him. Then we go to investigate. So what is really happening? Like we say, it's a developing story. But I'm just asking questions based on the information I have. The information I have, I must repeat, might be very shallow. Because all the information we have really indeed is very shallow. One-sided. We've not even heard from the lawyers of the government of Benin Republic. We've only heard from Professor Salami, who is Sunday Igboho's lawyer. So probably maybe we have both sides of it, and we know the thinking of the Beninois government. We'll be able to, draw some inferences. But now, I must say it's up in the air.
Very sketchy.
Okay, when I said yesterday that this is a developing story, that point was made advisedly. Because I suspected that there would be fresh developments. Now, what has happened now, if you look at it, this is not just about legalism. I said that in relation with the Nnamdi Kanu case.
Yes.
And in the Republic of Benin, we have seen the same scenario playing out. Now, fresh charges were filed against Sunday Adeyemo, Chief Sunday Adeyemo, yesterday in court. And on the basis of that, of those fresh charges, he has now been kept in custody. The date of the next court appearance has been extended. So you have, in this particular case, geopolitics. I mean, the Republic of Benin, I said, as a sovereign state, will assert its own rights. And the way they are asserting their rights in this particular political trial, you can see very clearly, has to do with geopolitics. 80%, 90% of the business in the Republic of Benin is dependent on Nigeria. I mean, I've been in a meeting before where a former president of the Republic of Benin consistently said that the Republic of Benin is the 37th state of Nigeria. And so when there is any issue involved, you cannot, discount the fact that the Republic of Benin will be sensitive and careful about what Nigeria wants. Nigeria is the unseen hand in that Sunday Igboho trial in the Republic of Benin. Well, if I'm wrong, let somebody say so. But the Nigerian government has carefully distanced itself from it. We have been talking about extradition. Salami, the lead counsel in the Igboho case, has said, no, Nigeria has not asked for any extradition. So Nigeria is just, playing a game. I think they are very smart. Malami and his team, they are playing a very clever game. So the issue now, all of a sudden, is not about Nigeria. They are now saying that Sunday Igboho entered the Republic of Benin improperly. Now, what does that mean in real terms? Under ECOWAS protocols. ECOWAS protocols prescribe the freedom of movement. There's the ECOWAS passport, the color is blue. There's the Nigerian passport. If you move within the 16 West African states under ECOWAS, your movement cannot be considered improper.
Yeah.
Okay? Because there's the freedom of movement, goods and services across member countries of ECOWAS. So when I was told that Igboho moved improperly, it looks strange. All of a sudden, they are no longer talking about, the passport, that he obtained Benin Republic passport, right?
Yes.
Well, he doesn't need to obtain Benin Republic passport. So these are issues that will have to be proven in court. But from this side, as journalists, as pundits, we will not take sides. We will be completely neutral in the matter as professionals. But some of these issues that have been raised will have to be proven so that due process, transparency, fairness will be seen to be the main priorities. And that's the position of the council on the side of Sunday Igboho. So, I mean, there is legalism involved, yes, but there's also politics involved. There's also geopolitics involved. So at this point, I mean, I will not condemn anybody. I will not say this person is right, that person is wrong. But we must say to the Nigerian authorities, to the Beninese authorities, that in all of these matters, due process must be followed. Because these are issues that are jurisprudential, not just for Nigeria and Benin Republic, but also for ECOWAS. How do you say a Nigerian enters a West African country under ECOWAS improperly? That is a matter that we have to be put on the table. And yesterday I referred to the 1951 Refugee Convention. Under the 1951 Refugee Convention and the 1967 protocols in that regard as applicable. Look, if a man is seeking political asylum and he uses any passport, you cannot say that he's a criminal. But that's for Salami and the people who will collect money for serving as counsel to worry about. So I'm not going to argue the case on television.
Wasn't it just yesterday you also quoted someone saying in Africa there's always something new?
Cleaning the header.
There's always something new.
No,
Entering
but I was told that
improperly.
I've been reminded that cleaning the header was a racist.
Oh, okay. So no, we will not take this quotation, of course.
I don't want to repeat the offense.
Well, that's all on the news headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Rotus Odiri, Michael Wilson, Erin Akejola, and myself to give updates on Africa global business, COVID-19, as well as sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us.
All right, welcome back. Still the morning show on the Rise News channel. Rotus. Business. MPC.
Yes, and rates.
Yeah.
That's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. Before good morning. Adesola, good morning.
Good
Doctor,
morning.
good morning. Viewers, good morning. Africa Business Update. We kick off with the Monetary Policy Committee. Remember the outcome. Let's take a look at the outcome. All parameters maintained. This is in Nigeria because there's so many MPC meetings going on across Africa. So beginning with Nigeria, all parameters maintained, 11.5%, the benchmark rate. Again, the CBN wants to essentially maintain its accommodative stance, looking at developments in the economy. We're expecting, well, Q2 GDP, we'll expect that in like the middle of August, but that should be, better than what we saw in Q1, 0.5%. So different parameters, essentially CBN, the MPC, Monetary Policy Committee, leaving things in place at 11.5%. The big news, though, was new measures in terms of the FX foreign exchange regime regarding BDCs. Let's take a look at that as far as the outcome here. So you should be looking at 5 touch points there. US dollar sales to BDCs, Bureau de change, have been ended. They've been halted. They've been banned. They've been stopped. No more of that. That's not going on. The central bank governor said a number of infractions and abuses have been going on with respect to the BDCs. And so they had to end, and there have been a number of banks, according to the central bank, are being investigated, even NGOs, as far as FX abuses are concerned. So that's point number one. Point number two, no more licenses, BDC licenses. As far as processing of those licenses, that has now come to an end. The central bank says it will increase FX allocations to banks. In fact, we're coming up on that front page of this newspaper in a second. And then the banks are mandated to sell foreign exchange to end users, to customers, to you and I. And there's going to be a whistleblower line that's going to be set up if the banks do not comply. So the issue here is, okay, if you're ending sales to BDCs, which you can think of as agents of liquidity for foreign exchange, where are you now going to sell, get that FX to? So the banks are going to take over, and the banks are going to be mandated, as long as customers provide a form, because the central bank also wants to track legitimate demand. You fill out a form for your personal travel allowance, business travel allowance, school fees, medical bills, and so on and so forth. Approach your bank. Their banks have been mandated to open up outposts to be able to manage this. The question now is whether that can be maintained. $200 million, according to senior sources at the CBN that this day newspaper spoke to in an investigation, have confirmed that $200 million has been disbursed, released to commercial banks in order to quell speculation, because based on the announcement yesterday, it's expected that there will probably be a surge in demand with respect to trying to get foreign exchange from BDCs that are no longer going to be there. So it's an interesting development, but the CBN is doing what it can in order to maintain foreign exchange liquidity. The question now is whether this can be maintained and if banks can meet up with the demand. Personal travel allowance is capped. Business travel allowance is capped. And also, how else do you define legitimate demand? The Olympics are streaming right now on different streaming services. Can you go to your bank and say, hey, I want to pay for Olympic streaming, which is in dollars, in order to watch the Olympics on my computer? I mean, how outside of personal travel allowance, business travel allowance, how else, what other measures of legitimate demands will fall under this definition, and will the banks be able to meet up? Oil prices, of course, haven't fallen. We haven't seen they fell earlier in the year, but they've appreciated now. But we haven't seen the corresponding accretion to the reserves. So the question now is whether this can be maintained over time. It starts today. So for all viewers that are watching, I'm going to go test this out myself. We're going to go to your banks and see whether or not your FX demands are met. We move to capital importation. The Bureau of Statistics has just released, in fact, they released it yesterday, the second quarter capital importation report, which refers to FX coming into the country under different categories. Unfortunately, it fell 54% quarter on quarter. We brought in total capital importation, if you add up foreign portfolio investors looking to invest in securities in Nigeria, if you add up foreign direct investment, you put it all together, $875 million total is what came in the second quarter. I mean, FDI was about 77 million or so, a really disappointing figure. The first quarter of the year, it was 1.9 billion. So that's a 54% drop quarter on quarter. Compared to last quarter, Q2 2020, it was a 32 or 33% drop. the main bulk, about 66% of the capital importation that came into the country was foreign portfolio investors. They mostly went towards money market securities. As you know, with what's going on in the US and in Europe, negative, low, zero interest rates, almost negative. So, funds are looking for where to park themselves and get some kind of return. So money market funds are where they're looked at. But unfortunately, what we really need is FDI. Let's take a look at this yearly capital importation charts since the beginning of this administration from 2015 through to 2020. You'll see the numbers are just not encouraging at all. Now, of course, you would add that there's been 2 recessions within this time, but still, 2015, a total of $9.6 billion is what came in. It dropped by about 50% to 2016. In 2016, to $5 billion, we were hit by a recession. It did climb to 2017, $12.2 billion. Again, that's in billions, just to make sure for all our viewers. 2018 climbed to 16.8 billion. 2019 climbed to 23. That's been the high so far under the tenure of the Buhari administration, capital importation. But then you can see the precipitous drop by over 60% to 9.6 billion for 2020. So while we're talking about foreign exchange and the CBN doing what it can to add liquidity to the markets, the vitally needed FX that's supposed to come in from the foreign investors, it's not coming in. So you combine that with the reserves not appreciating. It's all eyes on the exchange rates because the liquidity unfortunately isn't there. We round up with Ghana. As I said yesterday, Ghana was going to make their decision, their own MPC meeting. They retained their rates at 13.5%. They cut in May down by 100 basis points or so. So they wanted to also take an accommodative stance, wanted to see how things would work out. Ghana was pointing to their inflation decelerating. That was one of the major reasons why they didn't they didn't move or hike rates or make any moves at all, similar to Nigeria. But it is worth a look. Let's look at Ghana's headline inflation. January, 9.9%. February, 10.3%. This is year on year for Ghana. March, it stayed still, 10.3%. Then look at the drop, the 10.3% to 8.5% in April, driven by food inflation. The deceleration in food inflation was what pushed down headline inflation in Ghana. Fell again, headline inflation 7.5% in May. It did tick up in June, 7.8%, driven by transportation and other items. But let's look at food inflation now, particularly for Ghana. For the sub-Saharan nations, food inflation is a big metric. 12.8% in January, 12.3% in February, 10.8% in March, and then look at the drop. I mean, it dropped to in April, 6.5%. Harvest also not the cedi, the Ghanaian currency, actually holding strong against the dollar. That also played into matters. 5.4% dropped again in May, and then it ticked up in June, 7.3%. But Ghana, just like South Africa, maintaining single digits in the inflation region, and also a decent currency in terms of the rand and the cedi against the dollar. That's our African business update.
All right, but the case is different in Nigeria, Rotus, and let's just point it out. You can see Nigeria's inflation rate, double digit. Food inflation rate going high up to about the 20%. And what is happening here, the fact that the inflation rate is decelerating does not mean that in real terms we're feeling that. When you see cost push, cost of commodity, you'll see, for instance, Gari, there's an uptick in about 15% of the cost of Gari month on month. Some goods like pepper, goodness me, pepper is about 50%. Pepper and tomato, uptick in price. Onion is another one. If you do a matrix of 15 food items, you'll see the impact. So when they say inflation figures are decelerating in Nigeria, the question is it really in real terms, street terms? What is the street expression of this in the pockets of people? Secondly, a lot of people have touted it, good move by the CBN, but it will bring its own challenges. I think Business Day was saying this morning that it will plunge the Naira at another all-time low against the dollar when you look at it, because there's going to be administrative push. When you go to the banks, you might not get it the way you want, your FX, you might not, all that bottleneck, then there's going to be the black market now, it will emerge. Because people that at the Aboki FX, let me just use that word, that have all of the dollar now, there's going to be the uptick in their price because they're going to want to sell and make a markup on themselves. So in the long run, it should be able to stabilize things, but in the short run, it will bring its attendant risk and challenges. But when you ask yourself critically, is that the way to go? I'd say yes is the way to go because that regime the CBN had before with the BDCs was just unsustainable.
Well, before now, the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Bureau de Change companies, they had very high expectations. There was that collusion. Well, maybe that's not the right word. There was that cooperation between them in terms of the measures applied by the Central Bank. But here, what we have seen is a divorce between the Central Bank and the BDCs. Now, the banks, the CBN is now turning towards the banks. Do the banks have the capacity? Even in the previous regime, the banks were not performing. It was difficult to get forex from the banks. Even if the forex are made available to the banks, do they have the capacity in terms of staffing, in terms of administrative bottlenecks? That's one question that we will all need to address. The second one has to do with the Naira. Could this measure taken by the CBN be considered as a silver bullet to the failure of the Naira? Failure looks like a strong word, but that's precisely what we are facing. And then the next negative issue is about supply. Can the CBN sustain enough supply for the banks for them to be able to meet expectations? Because expectations will go up, demand will go up. And then, of course, yesterday, Rotus. This is the main question for you. You were saying the Monetary Policy Committee will adopt an accommodative stance. No, what you have seen coming out of the MPC meeting yesterday is an aggressive stance. But what are the advantages in this aggressive stance that the CBN has adopted? And then Nigeria's capital importation, which is one of the topics that you address. If you look at it, I would like you to help us break it down a little bit more. Portfolio investment accounts for, most of the capital importation that we have seen in Q2, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. Foreign direct investment is very low. Other investments are very low. Why is that the case? I don't want to do the analysis myself. You are the expert. And then Lagos emerged as the main destination for capital importation. What is it that is special about the state of Lagos that it got most of it? And then Stanbic IBTC is also the bank that emerged at the top in terms of that capital importation. What is special about Stanbic IBTC? When we were talking about first-tier banks yesterday, I don't think Stanbic IBTC was on that list. But here, with regard to the capital importation report that you bought, Lagos State, Stanbic IBTC, and then, of course, decrease. Over 54% decrease in capital importation. What is responsible for that? That's the kind of conversation I would like us to have.
All right. So starting first of all with the MPC, you either adopt a hawkish stance where you hike rates, or you adopt a dovish stance where you loosen, right? You either tighten or you loosen. The aggressive stance you're referring to, Doctor, I think that's heavily influenced by what happened with the foreign exchange. As far as the rate is concerned, an accommodative stance is where you're saying, hey, look, let us just leave things as they are. Let's allow what our previous moves to try to support the economy to play out and see how things go. So that's the accommodative stance adopted by South Africa, adopted by Ghana, adopted by Nigeria. We're expecting Kenya's decision later today. We also expect that to be the same thing. So you adopt an accommodative stance to allow the prior moves you've made to boost the economy to play out. So you don't make any moves there. With respect to capital importation, look, the foreign direct investment has lagged for years. The portfolio investor, specifically speaking to the reason why portfolio investment was the largest block, is because again, the global, what you look around globally and you see rates at zero in the United States. They've been talking about tapering. Well, they haven't going to move anything for now. Jerome Powell says rates are going to stay low. Same thing with the Bank of England. Same thing in the Eurozone. So Japan, negative rates. So if you are a portfolio investor and you're looking around the world as to get the best returns for your funds, you're going to go to where interest rates are highest, which is why those funds are going towards money market securities. 364-day T-bill, I think it's like 8.76% or so. The CBN also issues OMO bills, which are in dollars. They haven't done that, in recent times, right? But those rates that you're looking at specifically in the money market sector, which has the money market securities, that has been what's been most attractive for foreign portfolio investors. But that's not what we need, because they call it hot money, in that when rates are high, they come in, and then when rates go down, they pull out. So the money it doesn't stay still. What we need is foreign direct investment. As for Stanbic IBTC, they've got the largest pension fund portfolio in the country. They're a unit of Standard Bank, which has a large deal-making pan-African presence. So Stanbic IBTC, being a unit of that, of course, is going to be the beneficiary of most of the funds that are coming. And then Lagos, we've talked about Lagos. Lagos dominates pretty much all other states when it comes to the fact that most foreign global multinationals are headquartered here. The stock exchange is here. The ports are here. This is the commercial capital of Nigeria. So we've talked about the other states that needed to be more competitive. That's why you've seen Lagos State dominate. But in terms of the drop, well, the drop is significant of the economic environment. That's why FTC has not climbed. So I hope I covered everything. If I didn't, please let me know.
Great one.
I just want to ask you about still on the capital importation, UK emerging again as the top source of capital investment in Nigeria. Did that come to you as a surprise? It's sort of constant. We've seen this over and over again, despite China's presence on the continent and in Nigeria.
Yeah, no, it's not a surprise. The UK has led the way for a number of years. Now, they should buy more of our oil. That's what we need. We need the UK to buy more oil from Nigeria. Unfortunately, India is the #1 destination with respect to oil. The Delta variant has impacted them significantly, so that's why that's not really working out. But no surprise there. The UK, if you look back at all the other capital importation figures, the UK has led the way for quite a while.
Well, thank you very much, Rotus. By the way, I like your tie. You have the Arise TV tie.
Oh, thank you, Doctor.
Oh, yeah.
The Arise TV color.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rotus. Really appreciate you. We'll move on to business. Michael Wilson joining us now from south of France. But Michael is a man that doesn't wear ties anyway, Dr. Abati. Michael, good morning.
He's an elder. He's allowed to do what he wants.
Very good morning to you. Basically, two things pushing the markets. An extension of China's regulators, really. The markets are very worried about where they're going to strike next and what the next move is going to be. We've seen what they've done with the ride-hailing app Didi last week. We've seen what they've done with the education sector and so on. And of course, there's that very big meeting of the FOMC today and the Federal Open Markets Committee, i.e. the interest rate setters in the United States. Not so much about when they're going to taper or anything like that, when they're going to taper their QE, but what they feel about inflation and the rest. So basically, Asia Pacific markets, not just really in the doldrums, mostly lower. Hong Kong is the standout loser, down 8% in 2 days. China's stocks, which are traded there, are the worst hit for all the reasons I've just suggested to you: Tencent, Alibaba, and Meituan, and so on. Mainland stocks, well, continue China mainland stocks, and basically they're the biggest tracker of those kind of stocks in mainland is down 8.8%, a bit of a sell-off for the Hong Kong dollar and also the renminbi too. Should expect. Now, China is falling short of its promises to the United States. It said it was up to buying $200 billion worth of goods from the United States to address the trade balance with the United States. It hasn't done so. It's rare. It hasn't really reached more than 70% of them at the moment. So you're talking about two countries which are still at loggerheads, basically, as far as trade's concerned. Remember, we've had those high-level meetings yesterday and the day before, and then all expected and all in preparation for the big presidential meeting between the heads of state of China and the United States in October. Will trade be high up on their talking list? I suspect it probably will. So as far as the United States is concerned, then let's recap there. The main averages snapped a 5-day winning streak. We had the mega capsule, the mega cap tech stocks reporting yesterday, including Apple, Alphabet, and Microsoft. Apple and Alphabet showing that ad revenues are actually up, which is good in terms of if you're buying into the recovery narrative. Then the fact that ad revenues are up is very good indeed. Microsoft exceeded expectations as well. Microsoft now really not so much selling computers, but into office support systems as far as software is concerned. And today, look at these biggies. Today, we're going to get Pfizer, McDonald's, Qualcomm, Facebook, Ford, and PayPal. All that coming up today after the bell. So a big day as far as working out what's happening as far as the US economy is concerned. As far as the UK is concerned, the IMF has updated two things. First of all, its growth forecast for the UK. Not quite sure where it's done that. It's saying 7%. And it's also saying the global economy will increase by 4.9% this year, but it's still cautioning about the COVID effects and so on. I don't really know why anybody thinks these figures are important. I put them to you because it's the IMF saying them. You know, you and I could have got to these figures straight away, but there we are anyway. So it's saying 7% growth in the UK, 4.9% globally. The UK senior ministers are meeting today to discuss entry requirements. In other words, this is from the US and the EU. Again, not so much Africa-based, but in terms of tourist markets, very, very important to get this two-way thing going, as well as business too. BA, Virgin, and Heathrow airports have been over the past couple of months saying, please tell us how you decide these decisions, make them much more open so that at least we can think about preparing for what the government's going to tell us. Anyway, some kind of decision perhaps today. UK ministers are playing down any kind of result today, but there's so many headlines in the papers here and internationally about this, particularly in the United States and the UK. I think we're going to hear something later today. And as far as, again, the UK is concerned, Morrison's, now again, it sounds a very, very domestic story. It isn't really, because it's about retail, it's about supermarkets, and it's about the money that's circulating around the world. Morrison's largest shareholder, which is called Silkris, owns 50% of the company, has rejected the Fortress offer. Fortress, if you remember, is the American-led hedge fund that wants to buy it for £6.3 billion. It said that actually the share price they put on that, £254 a share, is less than Morrison's were pre-pandemic. So its largest shareholder is saying, go away and think again. So that's actually continuing. As far as oil and gold are concerned, oil really had those API inventories from the United States yesterday, but didn't really move the oil price. Again, waiting, I think, on this flavour from what the FOMC is going to say. So we're looking at Brent around 74, WTI around about $72 a barrel, more or less unchanged. And gold, again, waiting on what it gets from the risk outlook from the FOMC, $17.99, just under that $1,800 an ounce.
Okay, Michael.
So basically, everybody is waiting for the FOMC. That's the crucial thing.
All right, Michael, thank you so much. I mean, how is the British government making these decisions as regards reopening and COVID-19? And I ask because specifically now there's this push to say those in the US and in the EU that have been double vaccinated, have been fully vaccinated, I should say, cannot come in, without the quarantine. They need to quarantine for 10 days. And when you juxtapose that with the science that rates are increasing, America CDC just reversed their max mandate to say that even if you are indoors and you're vaccinated fully, you should still wear a face mask. And Britain is saying, oh, you can come in, we want to boost tourist numbers. So is it about business or is it about the science here? Because it's all convoluted. And amidst all of this, you still have the pandemic going on with the tracing app. What is really happening here?
What's really happening is what's always been happening, which is it's when politicians start to take notice of health officials and when they say, no, we're going to do this for the economic good of the country. Of course, it makes a difference. If you've got more visitors coming in from the EU and the US, there may be business people, there may be tourists, it doesn't matter, providing they're spending money, providing that money is going both ways. As we can, like I've done, come to the EU and having a small holiday here and vice versa. That works. That's getting back to normality. So politicians really have to having to decide themselves whether they take note of the scary stories that they're getting from the health officials in whose interest it is to paint a bad picture, or they're saying, do you know what, we're going to be politicians and we're going to try to encourage some kind of economic growth. As far as masks are concerned, we're finding now, as far as the UK is concerned, it's very much a personal position. Personally, I will wear one until I'm told absolutely not to. I think it's a polite thing to do. It's also a guarantee of one's own personal security and, most importantly, doing it for other people as well. Epidemiologists can argue forever about the effectiveness of them. I think it shows that you actually care about your own security and you care about other people. If I can put it like this, it's a neighbourly thing to do.
Well, Michael, I would love you to comment on the IMF report on global economic recovery. They've now put economic recovery at 6%, the global rate. For the US, 7%. For the United Kingdom, positive news, 7%. India has been downgraded from 12.5% to just about 9.5%. But the big issue has to do with developing countries, developing markets that have been downgraded down to just about 3.4%. And even then there are variations, particularly for countries like Nigeria. What do these developing countries, developing markets, what do they need to do, at least to be able to get to a higher level in terms of economic growth? And also, that report is saying that globally, inflation rates that we're witnessing may subside and go back to pre-pandemic rates. What do you think of that IMF review of its April report?
What the IMF is saying is it's drawing its slide rule across, it's drawing its calculations across various economies, and it's looking at the uptake of vaccines within those economies, and then it's making its macroeconomic assumptions from that, that's what it does. Whether you believe what it says, whether it's on good evidence, well, that's completely up to you. I think that these organizations personally are too big to take a granular look at particular countries, but that's just me. If you think that the IMF has that kind of authority to say those kind of things, and you think that the IMF does a good job as far as developing countries are concerned, well, that's your opinion. I suspect that opinion actually differs all the way around the world. But what they're basing the growth on, the growth forecasts, first of all, are vaccine uptake. Number two, the fact that the UK and the US are high up on their list of recoveries does not necessarily say anything about their own particular economies. All it says is it's a big rebound from a long way down. That's the weakness of looking at these kind of figures. As far as inflation's concerned, anyone's guess. They're going along with central banks around the world, which are saying, look, of course you're going to get a big uptick right now because we've been so far down. The question is, what is the long-term view? Do we look through these upticks? Well, personally, if I were in central banker's position, I would. It's quite a brave thing to do because everybody's shouting at you as inflation is rising. It might be temporarily, but the Bank of England, the Fed, the European Central Bank, and indeed China's authorities, in as much as you can make anything of them, are saying that they're looking through what's going on at the moment and looking forward long term. It might be a very different picture, and this is what the IMF is echoing.
And I just wanted to ask you, Michael, the earnings season is upon us. The big techs outperforming yesterday. What are your thoughts? What do these earnings tell us?
What they tell us is that that digital is here to stay. That what was founded in the pandemic about working from home, hybrid working and so on, buying online, all those things that are about online and big tech are here to stay. That's what the pandemic's done. That's what these results are actually saying. Remember the cautionary note that what was also in these results from all those companies I quoted was the fact that they are slightly worried about supply chains. That's one thing that they can't do anything about. They can't do anything about the supply of microchips, for example, which are held up because of weather conditions around the world. I told you yesterday about floods in China and the EU and so on, and Germany. And how that's affecting the actual supply chains and the import and export of goods. But apart from that, what these results are saying is digital is here to stay.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. Appreciate you for your time. Adesua, morning.
Thank you, Rufai. Well, let's talk about the global pandemic at this point. The Delta variant is no doubt wreaking havoc around the world, proving we will only be safe when everyone else is safe. These are the latest figures according to Johns Hopkins University tally on your screen. Infections have surpassed 195 million. Fatalities from the pandemic, unfortunately, over 4.1 million people, and 3.9 billion, at least 3.9 billion doses have been administered. Now, the WTO, the World Trade Organization, is expected to discuss global demand for vaccine patent waiver at its ongoing General Council meeting in Geneva to improve vaccine production and supply across the world. You'd recall that the US, South Africa, and India have led calls for the suspension of intellectual property rights on several jabs. They say it will allow local production of vaccines and hasten an end to the pandemic. But it's opposed by several wealthy nations, including the UK and the European Union. Here in Nigeria, let's look at the data. In the last 24 hours, it's a record daily high for the country. Over 400 new infections were recorded. Lagos again posted more than 3/4 of the new cases. This is as the federal health authorities in Nigeria say the country is yet to see the worst from the pandemic and is warning everyone to be cautious. Let's go to Tokyo. Tokyo has reported also its highest daily number of new infections. The Japanese capital reported 2,848 new cases, exceeding the earlier record of 2,520 cases from January 7 this year. It brings Tokyo's total to more than 200,000 since the pandemic began last year. The host city for the Olympics is under its 4th state of emergency that will last through the Olympics and into the Paralympics next month. The Prime Minister Suga is asking people to stay at home and watch the Olympics from their TVs. U.S. health authorities have recommended that people should resume mask wearing in some parts of the country regardless of their vaccination status. You recall that just 2 months ago, the CDC said fully vaccinated people no longer needed to wear a face covering. However, coronavirus cases are climbing in the U.S. and vaccination rates appear to have plateaued at about 50% or less. The country recorded 88,000 new cases and 273 deaths in the last 24 hours. Let me also tell you that the CDC is citing new information about the capabilities of the highly transmissible Delta variant amongst the vaccinated in the U.S. According to the director, Walensky, she says the Delta variant has the level, with the Delta variant, the level of virus in infected, vaccinated people is indistinguishable, in her words, from the level of virus in noses and throats of unvaccinated people. That's with the vaccination. If you are infected with the Delta variant, it's almost as equal to those who haven't received the vaccines. And finally, the United Nations says schools closed due to the pandemic must reopen as soon as possible. The United Nations is estimating that the education of more than 600 million children across the globe is at stake. A spokesperson for the body said it was a terrible mistake to reopen bars, pubs, restaurants, social events before considering schools.
I mean, amazing times here, and it just speaks to it that we should all be careful. You can see that the American CDC has revised that mandate on mask wearing. And in Nigeria, there's been a surge in the Delta variant. Most of these new infections we're seeing predominantly are Delta variant-based infections. There were about 10 infections talked about in Lagos and some other
Abuja.
parts, and Abuja recently. So we should do something about it. And it's even more scary that when it gets into the nose or the other parts of entry into the body, you can't distinguish. I mean, but a lot of people have been able to make a case for science by saying that people that have recovered from the Delta variant recovered quickly because they were vaccinated.
Yes.
And the vaccination did help. I mean, we can see clear cases like Sajid Javid, the British Minister for Health, and we see his quick recovery. So we keep making a case for proper vaccination. So this is a time for us to, ramp up our vaccination move because we still have a window of opportunity. The cases are not setting in as they, but some will argue, say, maybe we are underreporting big time in this country. Maybe we don't have coherent data.
We're not testing enough.
Or we're not testing enough. The problem is we need to get vaccines in. The other day they said they've got some vaccines in. Yeah, let's work on that. Secondly, we need to improve upon our own vaccine candidates. Nobody's saying anything as regards that. How much do we need? Over $200 million? We should be able to put that out there. And I keep saying it's a shame on us. If Cuba can have a vaccine candidate now that they're administering to their own citizens, it's past phase 2, phase 3 trial, what is Nigeria doing? We should do that. Let's not deceive ourselves. You see, they're going to meet in Geneva and do all that talk. Nobody will go through the hard work of research and give you his intellectual property for free. His intellectual property is his money. His IP is his money. The best they'll do is fill and finish. And you might not agree with me now, but in the long run, you'll see it. They will drag their foot as regards giving the IP to these vaccines for you to create their vaccines. And the best they will do is fill and finish. That's why we should think of creating our own vaccines and in the end, ensure that we vaccinate a large part of our population, which is still really under-vaccinated. We've not even scratched the surface of herd immunity. Dr. Bati was saying yesterday, it's only 0.6% of our population we've vaccinated. That is scary.
Okay, let's start from the United States. You cited the United States, and we'll put on the screen Rochelle Walensky.
Yes.
That's her name.
Yes.
The director with the Center for Disease Control. And the whole point that has been made is that, look, the CDC in the United States has revised its position in early May. In early May, the decision was taken that if you have been fully vaccinated, you could do without a mask, particularly indoors. Now the US CDC has reversed itself to say that going forward, people must wear masks indoors. Otherwise, the data, this is based on data, and I think we need to emphasize that, is that, look, with the way the Delta variant is spreading, particularly in those states in the United States where the vaccination rate is low, in the southern states, in states like Missouri, Arkansas, Georgia, Florida, then, of course, they're now saying that has been revised. And also schools must also ensure that school children wear masks. But basic takeaways, what the US CDC has said is a recommendation. It is up to the states to ensure the enforcement of this new recommendation that has been made by the CDC. The second takeaway has to do with the virulence of the Delta variant, because the point was made about the Delta variant, and that the people who are most vulnerable are those persons who are not yet fully vaccinated. And within that category, the US CDC identifies young people who have not been vaccinated as a major risk. But the bigger issue, which is the third takeaway for me from the United States, is the request now by Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, the three major providers of vaccines in the United States, that, look, booster vaccines will be needed. Okay? So those are the key issues from the United States. Now, as for the education challenge, what the UNICEF is saying is that over 600 million children are at risk. And if you look at where these 600 million children are at risk, they are in Asia, they are in the Pacific, they are in Africa. And the UNICEF is saying that, look, all these schools, if they continue to remain closed, it will pose a threat to the volume, the population of out-of-school children, and specific recommendations were made about the need to increase vaccination rate, about the need to reopen schools, about the need also to protect the education budget. And is this surprising? I don't think it's surprising that education has been worse hit. Even here in Nigeria, we have a double jeopardy. It's not just COVID-19 that poses a threat to the education system. Banditry terrorism, as it has been appropriately named, is also part of the problem. In Tokyo, Japan has been able to immunize 25.5% of its population. But in Tokyo, specifically, the highest rate was recorded on Tuesday, 2,898 cases. In the whole of Tokyo itself, over 200,000 cases and over 15,000 fatalities. The question to ask Prime Minister Suga is that, okay, would this lead to a cancellation of the Olympics? But Prime Minister Suga tells us that that is something that nobody should worry about. And his health minister is putting the blame on bars and restaurants that have been serving alcohol. I think this issue of alcohol and COVID-19 community spread is something that we may need to reflect further upon, because it's not just in Japan that this issue has been brought up. It has also been brought up in South Africa, where there is this alcohol connection to COVID-19. But let me leave it there. Maybe another day when I have more time.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Batin. Thank you, Rufai.